Hey guys, welcome back to another Design Clips at W+9. This is Dawn. Today's video is a little bit different. I am featuring the Simon Says Stamp Prayers set along with our newly released Happy Wishes stamp set. And I'm creating these for the Lasting Hearts card drive. The Lasting Hearts campaign is for mothers and families who have recently suffered miscarriage or the loss of a child. And there are many ways that you can help out. The campaign is working with several OBGYNs to hand out copies of the book You Are the Mother of All Mothers by Angela Miller, and 25% of the proceeds of the Prayer stamp set by Simon Says Stamp and Hero Arts will go towards purchasing these books. With those books, they want to include a handmade card from someone who cares, and this is the perfect way for everybody to get involved. I have all of the links in the description box below to my blog as well as to Jennifer McGuire's blog, where you can find complete information on this campaign. And for my cards, I'm going to share with you how to quickly and easily mass produce these floral arrangements using the MISTI. And this is the key to this technique, and I'm using the original size as we'll be using the entire thing. So I've pre-cut my card panels from Dove Gray cardstock, and they are 4 by 5 1/4 inches, and then I've also pre-cut some standard 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card bases. I'm going to start by setting up all of my stamps on the MISTI door. And I've already stamped out my finished arrangement and how I want it to look when it's done. And I'm going to use this to get that first flower in place. So I've laid it down on top of my panel. I will place that flower, pick it up on the MISTI door, and now I can remove that guide, and I'll just use it as a visual reference for the rest of the card making. So I'm going to start by stamping this in our white pigment ink. I am stamping on colored cardstock, so when you stamp your dye inks onto colored cardstock, that gray underneath is going to affect my color. It's going to dull and darken it. I want these to stay bright and vibrant, so by putting down this white pigment ink first, it's going to give me a good white to stamp my colors on top of, and then they're going to stay more true. Now, if you don't want to do this part, you could completely skip the white. It's really up to you. You would just go straight to your colored stamping, which I will show you here in the next step. But now that we've got this flower in place, we'll just leave it on the door, and we will go through and stamp all the rest of the panels. Now it's time to set up the next grouping, and we're going to set them up by color. So now I'm looking at this warm wool. Now those little sprigs I've stamped twice, but we only have one stamp, so I'm just going to put these two on the board at this time, and then I'll hand add in that last one. I'm going to move this up to the opposite corner of the MISTI, and then I'm going to use my visual reference here to set up my stamps where they go. And then I'll just close the door and pick them up onto the MISTI. And again, I'm leaving everything on the MISTI door. Because I'm changing the location on the MISTI, I can leave those objects on the door, and then I can reuse them again when I come in to add my colors on top. So again, I'm going to come through and I'm going to stamp all of my objects in white for each panel, making sure that I line the paper up in the exact same spot each time. So you'll see I'm lining it up against that outer edge. I'm using the paper underneath as my guide. And now I'm stamping every one in the exact same place each time. Once I'm done with all of the panels, I'll make sure to clean off my stamps really well, and then I can do the next grouping. I've moved the paper to the other corner, but look, it's going to interfere. So I'm going to turn my paper a quarter of a turn here. I'm going to set up my pieces back where they go. These are all of the ones that are going to be stamped in green. And now I'm going to double check and make sure, yep, I can do that. So now all of these will be used for the next grouping, and these are my green ones. So I'm just going to ink those up and stamp those into place. And now I can go through and do all of the panels the exact same way. And again, you'll notice I'm leaving all of these on the door of the MISTI, and that's because I don't want to have to realign these when I come in to add my colored layer on top of the white. Now once that grouping is done, I'm going to do the final grouping, and for that I'm going to move it down to the opposite corner again, and I'm going to set up all of the remaining stamps. So this is going to include the flowers that will leave white, the middle of the big flower, the little yellow flower here, and the blue flowers here. They're far enough apart, the yellow and the blue, that I can ink them up separately on the door, so we're just going to go ahead and stamp them all now. So like before, just pick them up on the door, ink them up, and then repeat for all of the panels. Everything should always be stamping in the same spot as long as you're using the same visual reference point for lining it up. For instance, here I'm using the very right edge of that grid mat underneath, so I'm just lining them all up to the edge and stamping. So that's going to finish up our white, and we're going to leave these little flowers white so we can go ahead and remove them from the MISTI door at this point. And now it's time to come in and do our colored stamping. And this is where the beauty of it comes in, because I'm sure a lot of you are asking, why am I stamping this white? So you'll notice here in this up close picture how you've got a dark color, a mid-tone, and a highlight. And this is all because we stamped it in white first. So where the ink stamps directly on the colored cardstock, it's going to be darker. Where it's stamped over the white, it's going to be lighter. And then we're going to leave some of that white showing. And we're going to do that by slightly shifting our paper before we stamp with our colored ink. This is a super easy way to add a little dimension. So I've put our panel back in our beginning position, and I've just shifted it up ever so slightly. Inked it up with our sweet nectar and stamped. Now you can see here it stamped it just slightly below our previous image. So again, I set it down, shift it up just a little, ink up my stamp with our sweet nectar. You'll want to make sure your magnets are not in the way. Stamp it down, and there we have just a slightly offset image. So see, you can see here we've got that lighter, the darker, and then the white edge. And again, I'll repeat this with each panel. And just like before, I'll move the paper up to the opposite corner, shift it down just a little bit, ink up my images. This time I'm using warm wool, and then just close the door. And I'll continue this with each of the groupings, remembering to turn my paper a quarter of a turn when I get to the third and fourth step. So now I'm just stamping in the green, and for that I used our beanstalk ink. And then I'll come in and add that yellow and blue. And for that I used our hayride and our lake house. I just inked up the yellow with the hayride and then the blue separately with the lake house. Okay, so now all of the main stamping is done. I just need to add in that extra little twig there. And for that, I'm just going to do them all by hand. I'm going to create a little mask because it's tucked behind it. I just created a rounded edge there on some release paper from foam tape. And then I'm just going to come in and stamp all of the little twigs here in white first, and then I'll come back over and stamp it in our warm wool. Again, I'm just eyeballing these because this part's not really as important. With the floral arrangement complete, it's now time to put together the sentiment. And for that, I'm using the matching die, which comes with the prayer stamp set, and then heat embossing the rest of the sentiment in white. And again, I'm going to use that MISTI. I'm using the prayers as a placeholder here, and now I'm using the grid lines on the MISTI to line up my sentiment. This says prayers to you and your family. So I'll make sure that it's nice and straight, and then I'll just pick it up on the door, and I can do all of my heat embossing at once. I've removed the die cut, and now I'm going to treat these with an embossing buddy bag. This will make sure that nothing sticks to any of that white pigment ink that may not be dry or any static. This is a really detailed sentiment, so it's small, so I want it to be very detailed in its embossing. I don't want it to be blobby. So by treating it first, it'll make sure that the powder only sticks to the Versamark, and your impression will be super clean and clear. The Versamark stays tacky for quite a while, so I'm doing 6 here, and so I have plenty of time. I can go ahead and stamp them all, and then add my embossing powder, and then heat set them all in a row. And I'm using the Wow Bright White Ultrafine Embossing Powder. This is a great one for these small sentiments. It retains all of its detail when you heat emboss it. And I decided to cut these panels down just a bit. So they are now at 3.5 by 4 3/4. And then I added a faux stitch detail around the edge using our Holiday Apertures die. To adhere the prayers die cuts, I'm going to be using this multi-medium mat. And I like to just squeeze it onto an acrylic block or my craft mat. And then I use my EK Success tweezers here to just kind of like dunk it and drag it across the acrylic block. That'll just spread the glue onto the back of the die cut. And there's several different ways that you could adhere this. You could have, you could put stick-it paper on the back of your cardstock before you die cut. You could run this through a Xyron sticker maker machine. There's several different ways you could do it. I happen to prefer this because I have a little bit of playtime because it's a liquid adhesive, and the the bottom edge, I know what it's called, hold on, the baseline of these letters, they're not even. So it gives me a little bit more wiggle room to make sure that I've got this sentiment straight here. And I adhered each panel to a white card base using the 3M foam tape. And then just for those finishing touches, I'm adding some enamel dots. These are our Autumn Splendor red dots. So these are our hayride. So it matches the yellow that we used. And I felt like those white flowers needed just a little something, so I'm adding a little dot with a clear sparkle jelly roll pin to the middle of each. And then I'll just finish each of these off with a simple message on the inside, something along the lines of "Please know I care, Dawn in Florida." If you'd like more information on the Lasting Hearts card drive, or more information in general on how you can participate or help, all of the links are in the description box below. You can find more information on our blog at stampawaywithme.blogspot.com, as well as links to Jennifer McGuire's blog. You can find all of the featured W+9 supplies at W+9.com, and you can pick up that prayer stamp set at simonsaystamp.com. Remember, you can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Periscope. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. I will see you next time. Bye.